Okay, so now I'm going to run through all the different parts here. So what we have is we have the main parts, all the stuff that's doing all the cutting sits in the middle here. You've got your usual, the sole plate here. You've got the mouth of the plane, and you have several other parts. You've got the cap iron. What that does is it locks everything in place. It's basically a kind of tensioner here to push it down. But this screw sets how much tension you can put into the cap iron. You've got your blade, which sits on the back, and you've got your chip breaker on the top. The chip breaker is screwed onto the top of the blade, and the whole point is that when the blade does the cutting, the piece of wood comes up, it hits this chip breaker, and that allows the chip to get basically pushed away from the blade, and it doesn't stay against it and cause a clog. So this should break it all up as it gets to a certain size. If I take those apart, a couple of things that can be done to improve your plane. So say for example your plane isn't working very well, so the main thing here is you would take something like the blade, well, not something like the blade, you take the blade and essentially you can flatten the bottom of it. You can see there's a few marks from basically flattening it on an oil stone just there. You've then got a grind angle. Offhand I can't remember the grind angle of this, I'm sorry, but you can look that up on the internet and find that out. Depending on what you're doing, you can actually change your grind angles and things like that. And then once it's got a little grind angle, it's got an additional little grind put on it using the oil stone just by hand to give you a cutting edge all the way across there. So that obviously dictates how well your plane will work. So if that's well kept and it is essentially nice and sharp, you should get a really good cut. Sometimes that won't happen and you'll get a lot of clogging. That can actually be caused by the chip breaker. The chip breaker's actually got a nice flat surface along the top here. It is a little bit curved in its makeup. So sometimes what happens as they get older is this gets a little bit rougher, doesn't work as well. So the wood gets in and underneath it, and sometimes they just need to be flattened out, and then that can essentially get put onto your blade like so and tightened on. When you're tightening this on, you want to leave no more than about 5mm of the blade sitting out there, but probably 2 to 3mm would be perfect. And then it's just simply taking a cabinet screwdriver here and tightening that bolt on, machine screw on. If you find that you can't find that, it is not great practice, but you can use the cap iron. Normally it will fit inside that screw and you can pop it open, but I would always recommend using something like a cabinet screwdriver. Alright, you've also got inside here, you've got the frog in here. If you, for example, are wanting to get less tear out, so sometimes when you're using the plane you get a lot of tear out, and essentially that is caused by basically there being too much mouth. You can actually move the frog ever so slightly forward and adjust it, and that helps with things like tear out and things like that. It does make it easier to clog though once you start messing about with the frog, so we tend to just set it in a certain position. You can also see a bit more clearly the depth adjustment wheel and our angle adjustment lever, and it just sits, basically everything needs to be located for everything to work really. So the depth adjustment wheel isn't doing anything, and neither is the lever. Alright, so if I come to put this back together, and I'll try and do this while showing you. So that's simply so that the screw goes into the locating hole, and then you've got this little part here that sits in this little rectangular groove. Once you've got that there like that, it's simply putting the cap iron on, like so, and just getting it. Sometimes you need to give it a little bit of a wiggle, right, to get it back on. Sometimes it's simply that screw's gone and tightened up as you've been messing about with it. So sometimes you just need to unscrew that a little bit, put a little bit more tightness back into it. So I'll tighten that a little bit more, and then you're pushing down on the cap iron there, and that's it sorted. I can then go back, flipping it over, and start messing about with the blade and getting that in the right position. Once I've got that, test it on a piece of wood, then you're ready to go. Hopefully this helps, and I'll see you again soon.